The laughter started before I even sat down. Not loud, not obvious, but enough. Enough to know it wasn't random. I had just stepped into the room when I heard it, low voices, a quick comment, then a soft laugh that ended just as I looked over. They didn't stop because they were embarrassed. They stopped because I was there. "Hey," someone said casually, like nothing had happened. I nodded once and took a seat. The table was already set. Food laid out neatly. Everything looked normal, the way it always did. But the tone, that was different. "How's everything going?" one of them asked. It sounded like a question. It wasn't. It was an opening. "Fine," I said. Simple. Enough. That didn't satisfy them. "Still keeping things simple?" another added, a small smile forming. There it was. Simple. That word again. I glanced up briefly. "Yes," I replied. The smiles grew slightly. Not wide. Not obvious. Just enough to say what they weren't saying directly. "That must be nice," someone said. No pressure. No responsibility. A few people nodded. A few more laughed quietly. I let it pass. Because moments like this don't need interruption. They reveal more when you let them continue. "You always had a different approach," another voice added. "Minimal. Low-key. Low-key." Another way of saying it. Another way of reducing something they didn't understand. I reached for a glass of water, not rushing, not reacting. Because reacting would only confirm what they already believed. "That's one way to live," someone continued. "I just don't know how you stay comfortable like that." Comfortable. That word carried more weight. Because now it wasn't just observation. It was judgment. I set the glass down slowly. "I'm fine with it," I said. That answer didn't land the way they expected. No defense. No explanation. Just acceptance. "You don't ever want more?" one of them asked. I looked at them. "What makes you think I don't have it?" I replied. That created a small pause. Not long, but enough. Then, more laughter. This time, slightly louder. Because they thought it was a joke. "I mean, look at you," someone said. "You're not exactly living like the rest of us." That line stayed. Because it was honest. Not kind, but honest. They weren't trying to hide it anymore. They believed it. I leaned back slightly, letting the conversation continue around me. Because now, it wasn't about me speaking. It was about them revealing everything. "We've worked hard to get where we are," someone added. "It takes effort." Another nodded. "Planning. Risk. Real decisions. Real decisions." I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was clear. They thought they understood everything. They thought they saw the full picture. They didn't. Not even close. "And you've always just stayed out of it," another said. Stayed out of it. That was their conclusion. That was the story they had built. And now, they were comfortable saying it out loud. I didn't interrupt. Didn't correct them. Because correcting them too early would ruin the moment. Instead, I let the silence settle. Then, "I made different choices," I said. That was it. No detail. No explanation. Just truth. "That's one way to put it," someone replied. Another laugh. Another glance. Because to them, this wasn't a discussion. It was confirmation. "You're lucky, though," one of them added. "You don't have to deal with what we deal with." Lucky. That word always comes from a place of misunderstanding. I nodded once. "If that's how you see it," I said. That answer didn't challenge them. It didn't argue. It just existed. And that made it harder to respond to. The conversation moved on after that. Different topics. Different voices. But the tone stayed. The assumption stayed. The belief that they understood something they had never actually questioned. I stayed quiet. Not disengaged. Just observant. Because moments like this don't need reaction. They need timing. And timing was coming. Slowly. Naturally. Without force. By the time dinner ended, everything had been said. Not directly, but clearly. Every assumption. Every judgment. Every belief about who I was. And what I wasn't. I stood up, gathering my things. "You heading out already?" someone asked. "Yes," I said. "Must be nice," another added. "No responsibilities waiting." That line followed me as I walked toward the door. Not heavy. not emotional, just clear. I stepped outside, the air cooler, quieter. And for the first time since I walked in, everything made sense. Not their words, their perspective. They weren't trying to be cruel. They were being honest. Honest about what they believed, about what they thought they saw, and about what they never questioned. I pulled out my phone, glancing at the screen briefly. Everything was still in motion, exactly as it had been, unaffected, because what had just happened wasn't part of the plan. It was just the moment that revealed it. I typed a short message. Simple, direct. Proceed. The reply came almost instantly. Confirmed. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and looked back at the house one last time. Lights still on, voices still inside, unaware, because what they thought they understood was about to change, completely, and by the time they realized it, it wouldn't be a conversation anymore. It would be a reality, one they couldn't laugh through. The next morning didn't feel different. That was the first thing I noticed. No sudden shift, no visible change, just the same quiet rhythm of everything moving forward like nothing had happened. And that's exactly how it needed to be. Because real changes don't announce themselves. They reveal themselves, slowly. The first call came late in the morning. I saw the name and answered. Something's wrong, they said immediately. No greeting, no calm, just confusion. What do you mean? I asked. There are issues, they said. Accounts are being reviewed, payments aren't going through the way they should, something isn't lining up. I see, I replied. Silence. Then, you knew about this? They asked. That question again, always after the moment. Yes, I said. A pause. Short, sharp. What does that mean? They pressed. I leaned back slightly, letting the moment settle. It means the structure changed, I said. That doesn't make sense, they replied quickly. Everything's been stable for years. They stopped. Because now, they weren't sure. That stability, I said quietly. Where do you think it came from? No answer. Because they had never asked. They had never needed to. Until now. We've always handled things ourselves, they added. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. Have you? I asked. That landed. Not loudly, but clearly. What are you saying? They asked. I stood up, walking slowly toward the window, looking out at the same quiet street that hadn't changed, but felt completely different. I'm saying the things you relied on. I paused, letting it settle, weren't always coming from where you thought. Silence. Real silence. Because now, they were listening. You laughed at my simple life, I continued. You assumed it meant I wasn't involved. That I wasn't contributing. Another pause. But that was never true. No interruption. No denial. Because they were starting to connect it. You didn't see what I was doing, I said. Because I didn't need you to. That changed the tone. Completely. Wait, they said. Are you saying you've been, what? Helping? Supporting? I didn't answer immediately. Because the truth doesn't need to be rushed. I've been maintaining the parts you never questioned, I said. That landed. Heavier this time. Because now, it made sense. Every gap that never appeared. Every problem that never surfaced. Every moment that felt easier than it should have. It wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It was structure. And that structure was me. That's not possible, they said. It already happened, I replied. Another pause. Longer. More real. For how long? They asked. That question stayed. Not because of the answer. Because of what it revealed. Long enough, I said. No number. No detail. Just truth. And now? They asked. There it was. The shift. From certainty to uncertainty. Now it stops, I said. Silence. Complete. Because that part was clear. Final. You can't just, they started. I can, I said. Not aggressive. Not emotional. Just certain. Another voice in the background. More confusion. More questions. The situation spreading. What do we do? They asked. That question again. Different situation. Same meaning. I didn't rush to answer. Because this wasn't about giving them instructions. It was about understanding. You move forward, I said. How? They pressed. The same way I did, I replied. Without assuming anything is guaranteed. That landed. Because now. They understood. Not everything, but enough. We didn't know, they said quietly. And for the first time. It sounded real. I know, I replied. Because that was always the point. They didn't know. They didn't look. They didn't question. They assumed. And now. They understood the cost of that. I didn't think it would go this far, they added. I didn't respond to that. Because it didn't matter anymore. The moment that could have changed everything had already passed. At the table, when they laughed, when they decided what my life meant. Without ever asking, I ended the call. No final words, no need, because the situation itself was the answer. I stood there for a moment, letting everything settle. Not victory, not revenge, just balance. They looked at my life and saw something simple, something small, something easy to dismiss. They were wrong, because what they didn't see was everything holding theirs together. And now, they had to face it. Without it,